Dad, who is the biggest loser in American history?
I told you, KP, don't be so hard on yourself. Come and enjoy some of the wildest chapters.
And most glanced over topics here on American Loser. It's getting worse. It's getting worse as the weeks go.
It's the phlegm throat.
Pretty good, too. Pretty good. Caw! That's all you got to do, guys. That's it. That's it. Caw! So welcome back to American Loser.
The eagle scream.
That's the move on that one. And by the way, our opening title intro is done by the very talented Chris Madd of Serious Matters NJ, recently featured in the movie Clerks 3. That being said, guys, welcome back to American Loser. If it's your first episode with us, you picked a good one. And what we like to do on the show here is kind of interesting. What we like to do is I'm KP Burke. I'm a local comedian here in New Jersey and New York City.
He's a Jersey guy.
That one's going to keep haunting me for a long time. We have an update on that, too, this week. Anyway, but with me, as always, the guy who made me fall in love with American history, my Delph of a dad, Lawrence Patrick Burke.
Hey, how we all doing today? Good stuff. Good stuff today.
Life is good all around, man. And, of course, where are we, Dad?
We're at, where the heck are we? I don't know. We're in somewhere in Jersey.
The Bell Works on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Yeah, Kahuna's missing out on his Saturday morning cartoons, but hey.
But it's always good to be here, you know.
There he is, looking over the fence.
Yeah.
Behind the ones and twos, the man, the wizard that makes all this happen for us here. And we got to give a shout out, of course, too, to Ming over to Shared Universe, just taking great care of us as always, and giving us the Kahuna here on a Saturday morning. So.
Do we have to shout him? Okay.
Kahuna,
okay.
if we were to, if we wanted to, we could take over. We could take over this building and have a malicious standoff like they had out in Oregon for a while, and Ming would not know what to do. All right.
Which side to get on?
Yeah.
The call is coming from inside the Bell Works.
There you go.
But we're not. I mean, we're nice guys. We're nice guys. I like to think everybody, and the three of us, we've all been in a fight or two before, but we're nice guys for the most part. But I don't think anybody would ever convince or confuse themselves with being able to call us pussies or wimps right away. Okay, so sorry if the language is a little bit colorful right off the bat here, but this is a Patreon only, so you motherfuckers are getting what you paid for.
There you go.
All right, first Patreon episode back in the video format here. Of course, the audio will also be available to you. And just want to say thank you so much to all the great people who are helping us out constantly on the show here.
Absolutely.
People bouncing in and out, too. And like, we get it, man. Some months you can afford it, some months you can't. But if you want a good story, man, come on in. We're always chock full of those.
If
this
you're not
one
there,
is
we're
good.
not here. So
Also
that's the way
true.
it works.
Also true. So thank you for that one. And real quick, just shout out my boy Greg Yeager's back. I'm very happy to see him, man. I know Greg's he travels a lot for work. He's always going all over the place, man. So, Greg, you're back, and we're glad to hear from you, all right, man? LP, say hi to Greg.
Hey, Greg.
See? Told you.
There
Told
you
you.
go. Welcome.
So we're in here early on a Saturday morning. We have a great story for you real quickly. Now, Kahuna, you're well-versed in most things cartoons. So when you think of the Mormons, is there a particular episode of South Park that comes to mind?
One of the best ones they ever made.
Very much so. Very much so. And by the way, we're going to give full props and full credit to the Church of Latter-day Saints, okay, also known as the Mormon religion here, because they have shown that they have a great sense of humor by allowing those parodies and stuff like that to go on. And, you know, there are people out there like, oh, yeah, those goofy guys. There was a time in this country when the Mormons were some of the most feared people in the entire United States of America.
Feared and hated. I mean, yeah.
Feared, hated, persecuted against. They went through a lot, and we just kind of sit there and like, oh, it's just the Book of Mormon on Broadway. You got to go see that to mock religion. And then it's like, oh. But you're still, you know, because your religion's absolutely foolproof, right? There's no no plot holes in that story.
And when it comes down to faith, it's tough making an argument against faith.
No, exactly, because when you try to question someone's faith, you deny them who they are and what they believe, and that's not really a nice thing to do. I'm going to be honest. But sometimes in the religious business, Dad, you got to have you can have the cross in one hand. You got to have maybe the sword in the other. Maybe that's how the early converting of
up the ante to full on shooting power.
That's how we're going to get the Vikings to go and become docile Catholics. That's how we're going to get a couple other things here. This particular story involves a little bit of everything. Sometimes there's a farming tools being sharpened and turned into weapons.
That's right.
The occasional pistol,
Instead of
sometimes a nice knife.
Yeah. And the plowshares into swords and the swords back into plowshares, whatever.
But I didn't know anything about this one. And you guys know it's going to be a good topic when Lawrence Patrick Burke picked it himself.
Ooh.
Okay?
Well, yeah, I just happened upon it. And, here's something in American history that not too many people are too well versed on.
Yeah,
Because
if I remember the way you were telling me the story worked, you were Googling New York Jets quarterback Zach Wilson's mother, who is, of course, a Mormon woman, lives out, because he went to BYU, Zach Wilson, and his mother's
BYU, Kev?
BYU, Brigham Young University,
There you go.
sir.
Thank you so much.
That's right, BYU. Zach Wilson was a star quarterback over there, current quarterback for the Jets, and so far, his greatest accomplishment has been having a really, really attractive mom. And so we're going to talk about him a little bit here, but Dad, we're making a nice American loser pie here today. Here's the ingredients, of course, just like a good cooking show. Imagine yourself
here we go.
on
There you
Chopped or Iron Chef, perhaps.
Yeah. What's the ingredients in the basket today, Kev?
Okay, this story must include, gentlemen, an embarrassment of an American president,
Okay.
South Park, the franchise quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, and a bloody fight over religion. Real quick, what are you trying to make, Kahuna?
A makings for a great episode of American Losing.
There
And a
you
little
go.
chilly, too, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you guys say anything other than the Utah War, you know something we don't, and please message me about it
The
right away.
Utah War?
The Utah War.
You never
You've
heard of
of
this
that
one,
right?
Yeah.
No. What? Oh, God.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you stumble upon this one?
Has the United States ever fought a religious war? Well, yeah, I mean, were the Puritans real accepting in other faiths? Not so much. Now that we're coming upon getting close to that whole Pilgrim Thanksgiving kind of a thing. Well, yeah, there's been some differences of opinion as far as what religion should we be following in American history, and this is one that we just happened upon here that came to a shooting war.
It's a pretty good one. A lot of big characters in here, and maybe we'll give you a slightly different perspective on how you view the Mormon culture and religion. And I do think there was a culture and religion too, because I was able to serve with some people that were of the Mormon faith, and sometimes you could tell, sometimes you couldn't. You know what I mean? It's all about don't let people find out who you are. Don't tell them who you are immediately. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's worth that. But here's what we're going to do. This is also known as a couple of things. This is the Utah War, the Mormon War. It's also known as Buchanan's Blunder, which is a pretty good name. I always appreciate some alliteration.
Buchanan as in president.
So in order to better understand the Mormon culture, if you will, and the Mormon religion, you have to actually figure out and start off with the founder, who a lot of people think they know the full story of, and they do know a great amount. His name is Joseph Smith. Okay, go ahead and say it one time, Kahuna. You know you want to. Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith.
Dum 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 dum.
I didn't want to do it, man. I didn't want to
quoting
cave.
South Park.
I know
that's
we're
all.
quoting South Park, but
Now-
sometimes I still need to show some restraint.
Later, we're going to explain to you why no one would ever say that to Joseph Smith's face while he was alive because of a certain
Dum.
a certain bodyguard. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So picture Shawn Michaels for a '90s wrestling reference here. Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, smaller guy, but talented guy, and he has a big bad bodyguard named Diesel that's going to bail him out of a lot of tough spots. Okay.
Diesel.
The aforementioned Kevin Nash. So that being said, we're setting you guys up here. So real quickly, here is the zeitgeist.
Okay.
So, in the city of Nauvoo, or Nouveau, however you want to pronounce it, which is out in Illinois, that is where Joseph Smith is actually the mayor of that town in Illinois, thanks to the power of his large Mormon population. What the Mormons would do is they would travel almost like, it'd be an overnight invasion. And all of a sudden,
Overnight exodus.
overnight
From
exodus.
Wherever they were at the last time they left.
They'd bail, yes. Usually, at any given time, I think you told me this, Dad, at any given time you can see Mormons just being harassed and maybe murdered or executed. There's, in fact, going to be something later that I'll mention as well, where you want to talk about one of the black eyes on American policy ever in terms of immigration. The people who have arguably the greatest case for an issue would be when literally the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed. That extermination order, Order 44 or whatever it is that winds up coming down, that's a pretty bad one. Pretty bad one. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Order 66 was much worse.
Order 66 was my order at Arby's the other day.
Ordering.
But anyhow, Joseph Smith is the leader of this group, and what they did at the city of Nauvoo, he was able to, in order to try to make sure that he didn't get kicked out or to consolidate his power and kind of dominate his will and the will of this new religion that had just been founded by him, mind you, he put himself into a role of power as the mayor and then made sure that as the mayor, you could put this guy's in charge of the post office, this guy's in charge of that, and they all happen to be Mormons. And that upsets the local population sometimes because they're like, well, hey, why are the Mormons calling all the shots here? You've killed democracy by just exploding the population. A constant argument for voting blocks and the Electoral College and everything like that. So you can see why people are a little testy about this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and by this time, too, the Latter-day Saints or the Mormon religion has now spread far and wide. And it's got its start in Western New York. And has now expanded greatly. And they come into Nauvoo, Illinois to escape persecutions that they faced wherever they went before that. And this wasn't just a little small town in Illinois. This was actually the second most populous city in Illinois, second only to Chicago. I mean, you got to think about the times, the zeitgeist, that it's not Chicago is not the booming metropolis that it is now. It was just a cow town, if you will.
One particular cow ruined it as a town too.
There you go.
Lose reception.
Yeah, Great Chicago Fire. But no, but this was a town of about 12,000 residents, which was a sizable community at the time. But now the Mormons move in, and they pretty much take over by voting as a voting bloc. That the church elders would decide who their candidates were going to be, and they would vote as the Mormon bloc, if you will, and vote their people in, and then those people would then appoint, as you say, all the other jobs in the city. So they become a definite a political force. Although they were religious based, they became a political force.
And there's some concerning things here. Now, if that's the religion that everybody else is practicing, that's not the end of the world. However, Mormon religion is a little bit quirky at times when compared to the more traditional, longer established religions. So one particular belief that had a lot of people in the town of Nauvoo and also anywhere else that they didn't really like or had gotten kicked out of, I should say, Dad. Another problem that they were having on the constant was that nobody really liked this idea that allowed the practice of polygamy.
Right.
Okay. Now, kahuna, if you were going to start a cult, I think the first rule of kahuna cult would be you don't talk about kahuna cult.
Yeah, absolutely.
But number two is kahuna is allowed to marry any woman he wants in the religion. You just got to bring it up. See, that's how you sell religion.
Absolutely.
You want to know how to sell religion to the kids? All right, you got to promise them something. You know what I mean? But anyway, polygamy obviously being the idea that you can have multiple wives. This leads to some people, especially in this story, having upwards of 50 to 60 kids. Okay, because that's the kind of numbers you can produce when you have 19 wives. So if you take a starting baseball team or starting football team, you can then, using those players, create your full 53-man roster.
And you're also creating a pretty sizable voting bloc.
I see no downsides to this so far.
Yeah, we're trying to. I'll tell you what.
My own damn sports team,
you could, and also
fully populate a cult that just adores me. I see no problem here.
So Smith's interesting though because Smith is not. He doesn't see himself as Jesus, if you will. So he's not. It's not like a cult where it's I'm the only one who. He has some cult leader tendencies, but he doesn't have any of the true. There's some abuses of power, which we'll get into, but he's not pulling like I am Jesus himself returned here, and you must follow my will kind of a guy. So to his credit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the other thing too is that not only are they the controlling voting bloc, if you will, in Nauvoo, Illinois, but there's also a very sizable, it's a quasi-military militia force that are made up of exclusively of Mormons. Which is about 1/3 the size of the U.S. Army at that particular point in time.
So you're yes, these are.
So we've not only got a voting bloc, but we've also got some muscle behind it too. So there's big concerns over where exactly is this whole Mormon thing going?
We're a peaceful religion, and these guys with the guns and knives are here to ensure that it remains a peaceful religion.
Right, to protect our own type of a thing because of the harassment that they have faced wherever they went beforehand. Again, this whole religion started in Joe Smith's backyard in upstate New York, which was kind of a crazy place at the time too. I mean, there was a lot of religious ideas and the whole spiritualism. If you know,
The sisters that
loser
were
reception there.
knurling their toes.
Right,
and,
right. So I mean, there was a lot of things, and some people feel that was all because why Western New York State? Well, there was so many upstart faiths or religious beliefs there that a lot of these people were coming down the Erie Canal. I mean, that just opened up the floodgates, if you will, to the west. That you were starting out at that particular time. You were starting out coming down the Erie Canal to get further west, where the land of opportunity was.
I do have one question when it comes to this stuff. Like, what? So how did? Okay, so essentially, if we're going to be talking about the Mormon religion, at what point did it kind of leave cult status and then just kind of move towards religion? Or
now he tells us that he has to have some respect earlier in the episode, Dad. And then he asks us the one question every legal advisor would say, "Oh yeah, don't answer that." Yeah.
No, seriously, like, I mean, what starts as like just an organization
There's
of people?
no answer, Kahuna.
Are you serious? Like, it just happens?
Well, Joe Smith publishes a book that has a wide circulation, if you will. A lot of people are buying this thing up and starting to come around to his way of thinking.
Okay.
And it expands, and they go from Western New York State to these various places throughout what was then the West, and things are growing, and as more and more believers come into the Joe Smith way of thinking, numbers are going to give you a little more power and shake things up a little bit. That those who are in power are going to object to that, or if your religion goes against what my faith is, if your faith goes against my faith, well, who's right? And
right. So to be clear, too, the Mormon religion is not the topic of this episode. Joseph Smith is not the topic of this episode. This is all well-traveled territory on other products, other shows, other documentaries, other cartoon shows. But picture this, if you will. When a Mormon wagon train would arrive in your town, consider it like a migrant refugee type invasion of people that hold beliefs somewhat out of a science fiction novel comparatively. Now, after taking over the town of Nauvoo or Nauvoo, depending on what Middle East, central accent you want to put on it, a Midwest accent, like when someone says you're being an ass right now, so.
Has anybody ever called you that?
A little bit. It's happening. But taking over the town of Nauvoo, all right, he has this Nauvoo Legion, if you will, or Nauvoo, however you want to say it, which is technically, like you said, Dad, his private religious army. Now, also ordering the destruction, this is where it's going to screw himself up here. He is the mayor. Remember, Joseph Smith is now the mayor of this town because his voting populace is going to put him into office. So if you're just somebody who lived there your whole life, you wake up 2 weeks later and all of a sudden it's a Mormon town with Mormon beliefs and you have a Mormon mayor and a Mormon post office and all this other stuff. You're going to sit there and say, what the hell happened to my town here? This is getting a little bit goofy. So some people are a little bit annoyed by that. So one of them puts out a newspaper called the Nauvoo Expositeur, I believe it is. And that is a newspaper that runs one edition and one edition only ever, where it happens to be very critical of Joseph Smith and the Mormon religion. And all of a sudden, this weird order seems to come down from the mayor's office that destroys the building and the printing presses that the newspaper was made on. So the first order of this new, quote, theocracy, and they're saying that as a theocracy, which would be where religion is the guiding principle and the governing body, and that if there's going to be such a thing as a mayor, perhaps really what Joseph Smith has eyes on is being a king of a small town here. I'm about to set you up for success as well, sir. So Joseph Smith is going to exercise his power as the mayor in order to do the first thing you're supposed to do whenever you assume power, and that is, suppress the rights to freedom of speech and the rights of the press and your right to self-defense. All the classic dictator shit that we've come to know and love. So,
Yeah.
but mind you, too, this is being done by the guy who's the mayor of Nauvoo. So, I mean, he's got some big swinging, what's going in here. But he's also about to do what, Dad? He's also technically running for a larger and greater office at the same time.
Yeah, his expectations are he's setting his sights a little further than just mayor of the second largest city in Illinois. He's going to go for the whole shooting match. He's going to run for president. The Mormons have suffered persecution wherever they went. That the locals are not having it, and this new religion is not being welcomed here, not in my backyard type of a thing. And he now decides that he feels that he's got enough clout outside of Illinois. I mean, all over the place, up and down the East Coast and other western cities, that he's going to run for president of the United States.
Also, the power of to grow an ego that way as well. When everybody's telling you how great you are nonstop, why wouldn't you think you could do something like that?
Yeah, and he writes to the various political leaders who were kind of like the next presidential candidates, to ask them about, are you going to be able to protect the Mormons, because we've suffered all these various persecutions wherever we went. What's your stance? What's your platform? What's your plank and your platform as far as the Mormons are concerned? Are you going to be able to protect us, that we can have our religious freedom, if you will? And very few of them write back to him, and then those that do are, a typical Politico, that they're vague as to what they're going to do. So he decides, hey, I'm going to run for office. I might have enough political clout. Even if I don't win, I'm going to make a statement here to get people's minds thought. And his campaign platform is, kind of progressive, because Smith's campaign platform says that he's going to have a gradual end to slavery. He's going to reduce the size of Congress. He's going to reestablish the national bank. He's for annexing Texas, California, and Oregon. He's going to reform the prisons. And, he's going to authorize the federal government to protect the liberties of Latter-day Saints and other minorities. Well, we can't be having that shit. I mean,
they're a wildly on-paper progressive group, okay, but then they also have some very, very questionable beliefs on the other side of things. So imagine sitting there and let's say you're an abolitionist, which means you want to get rid of slavery. And you're sitting there, and then this group comes up to you like, hey, by the way, we totally support abolition. Actually, it's one of our guiding principles. And you're like, finally, some allies. And you're like, but we also like to chop babies' heads off and parade them around on a spike. And you're like, oh, I can't be seen in pub. Listen, I need you to vote with me.
That's Halloween.
I need you to vote with me on this thing, but I can't really be associated with you. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of, if you take that of the way that polygamy was viewed back then, and the open practice of it within the Mormon religion, that made it where you're like, yeah, so we agree on some stuff, except for that thing that everybody in the country hates about you guys. So there's kind of a difference with all that. And Joseph Smith, by the way, and I don't want to rush you here, but we have to kill off our opening character.
okay. Well, I'm good
Damn,
for that.
it's a Tarantino
sure?
movie
Absolutely.
already.
We're killing off the opening character. The 1844 presidential campaign would have been when Joseph Smith did run for president. And by the way, he did run for president. And his assassination and death, which we're about to talk about, makes him a footnote in history, too. He's the first presidential candidate to ever be assassinated.
Yep.
The first one.
Whoa.
So, correct. And a lot of people don't even know that a Mormon ever ran for president, and we had a couple, I believe.
Yes, we did. And
Mitt
he
Romney was another one, yeah.
Yeah, he was the first presidential candidate, American presidential candidate, that happened to be assassinated. So, I mean, he's making some noises, and a lot of people are paying attention to what's going on with that. And he's gaining support. He's also making a lot of enemies. And
Tom Cruise is marching from town to town with a bunch of biker dudes telling us all to praise Xenu.
In no hard road would we trust.
He is arrested on some trumped-up charges.
Well, I don't know if
put
they
into
were
jail.
trumped up.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not all one-sided here. There was some atrocities on both sides. some might say, well, we were just trying to protect our own. Others are saying, well, we were trying to just make sure that these people don't hang around in our backyard.
They were trouble followed behind every movement with the Mormon religion,
Right.
especially
Every time
early
they
on here.
moved, not the movement, but every time they moved to a new location, trouble was sure to follow.
Specifically, again, that one newspaper in town in Nauvoo that goes ahead and all of a sudden is closed down. One issue, all you had to do was criticize Joseph Smith once, and boom. So you're seeing the fear of that is the power grab that's coming in here. So both brothers Joseph and Hiram Smith will both flee Illinois for some time before deciding to come back and face the charges. Some allude that Smith believed that his power in town could help him overcome the charges. Like you were saying, Dad, maybe the idea that because I have a controlling interest in the town, they're not going to come down on me as hard as they could, or we can just make this a settle out of court issue maybe. Others claim that he knows that not facing the charges will result in his loss of power and potentially having to move on here. And again, Nauvoo is a major hub, if you will, at the time, so you don't want to lose out on that. But here they are, the Smith brothers over at the Carthage jail. Hiram and Joseph Smith will soon be martyred for their religion, according to one side, or rightfully executed to restore the peace to the other side. 200 citizens, and if you could pull up the first photo, Cahoons, it's going to be the death of Joseph Smith. So, as my father pointed out, this is not the most necessarily accurate portrayal of it, but keep in mind that you couldn't have live photography back then. There's a couple other creepy ones here. So they're at this jail in Carthage waiting for, and I believe this building's still standing too, and you can visit it.
Yeah.
But anyway, 200 people in the middle of the night, 200 townspeople in Nauvoo, obviously not Mormons or no longer wanting to be Mormons, will take gunpowder and they will add that to their wet faces, okay? And they will disguise themselves like ninjas in the nighttime. And these 200 armed citizens will descend upon Carthage jail, where they will shoot and kill both Hiram. Hiram dies almost immediately in a gunfight as he's falling out a window. I believe his last words were, yeah. His final words were, for just as little as $3 a month, you can help support American Loser. Now,
He was
Joseph
a fan
Smith,
even in death.
Joseph Smith is going to live a little bit longer here, but probably not for the best, because he winds up getting shot several more times, and then they finally actually put him up. I probably had to prop him up, I would say, right, Dad, to face
Yeah.
his final firing squad.
Weekend at Joey's.
It's
Bernie's.
so both these
I know.
brothers are now killed.
At Joey's, weekend at Joey's. All right, I got you.
Doesn't matter how silly, by the way, and this is why after that incident in 1844, it was time for the Mormons to get out of hot water and find a place that they could settle on their own, because it doesn't matter how silly a religion appears to be to somebody else. Your freedom to practice that religion is something the country's absolutely founded on. Sorry, we're not budging on that one.
Yeah, but again, it's a whole political and religious kind of a thing that's a two-edged sword here. And there was some speculation that some of the people that were in that mob of 200 were some political operatives for his upcoming Whig opponent. The Whigs was another strong national party, and Henry Clay was rumored to be, or speculated to be, that he was going to be the next political candidate for the Whig Party. And there's speculation that there was political operatives working for Mr. Henry Clay in that mob of 200. So, was it politically motivated? Yes. Was it religious motivated? Yes. I mean, it was just, there's a lot of things going on
If
here.
you're affiliated to a party, we kind of think you're silly on this show, but that being said, both parties have practiced throughout the course of history. Never let a crisis go, always make useful of a crisis.
Fan the flames, right.
So now it gets interesting here because there's a little bit of a pivot move, and I think this is a smart one here. And this guy's got some admirable stuff to him. He's got some weird stuff to him. I personally was a big fan of his great-great-great-grandson, and you'll see why here in a second, Cahoons. But Utah is this isolated and uncertain new territory that has been given/taken by the Americans following the war with Mexico. So in order to have land and make sure that it's yours, you have to have it settled. Therefore, you have a claim to it. That way, if those settlers do get attacked, you will now send out the United States military forces in order to defend your interests out there. And it's all about making sure that the other countries can't do something to counter that by saying, like, oh, no, you don't want to lose any more territory than Native Americans. We also don't want the Mexicans thinking they can make a move, or maybe the French are going to start a colony out there too. This is pre-Civil War America. Okay, that's important to mention too here. So out west is still wild. John C. Fremont's bouncing around all over the place. We'll get to him another day. He'd be a great topic.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
And the fact that he looks like Mark Riccadonna makes me laugh. But anyway, Utah is isolated and uncertain over there, so you have to settlers here, and you need settlers, and beggars can't be choosers. The government needs someone to go out there, and Utah's kind of a strange place. They're not really sure what they have all about it. There's this weird giant salt lake out there. It's not exactly coastal California that people keep talking about and trying to get to, and it's not exactly Texas, which is already being settled in blood in many different ways. You guys know about that if you watch this show. So they decide that the United States is going to allow and almost encourage Brigham Young, the new leader of the Mormon Church, to go ahead and try to settle out in Utah. And Brigham Young's hope is that by doing this, they can be isolated amongst themselves. They can rule themselves based off their one religion. It's essentially like, hey, we want no outside interference. We don't want to bother anybody, but no outside interference.
We can be left alone because we're carving out our own section of the country. We can call the shots here.
Yeah, I don't need anybody coming around and telling my third wife that she could do better, all right? But that hope being that the isolation and ability to govern themselves, but also adhering to the federal power of the United States, could be the trick would stop the Mormons from having such a bad reputation and a lot of bloodshed that follows them, too, around. So long
Yeah,
before...
I got to go back to... are you going to get into...
If you say Joseph Smith, I will throw this coffee at you.
No. Are you going to get into our Governor Boggs?
For the original Utah Territory?
Yeah, well, before they... I mean, they were in Illinois. They were also in Missouri, and a lot of different troubles were happening. Again, this was not all one-sided by any stretch of the imagination, but there was a strong faction of Latter-day Sainters in Missouri, and to show you the animosity that took place with that, and we're saying Missouri, we're talking western Missouri, which again is the wild frontier at the time.
This is as bad as it gets. I know where you go now.
Okay, all right. There was a lot of hostility, shots fired and people driven off, houses burnt, people driven off in the middle of the night, vigilante justice, if you will. To the point where the Missouri governor, Lilburn Boggs, issues an executive order number 44. What did the Missouri executive order number 44 have to say? Well, that any Latter-day Saints must be driven from the state, must be exterminated. Strong words?
Whoa.
Yeah, strong words. Must be exterminated from Missouri. In other words, there is not going to be any Mormons in Missouri.
Hi, we're from the Missouri government, and we just want to let you know you have two choices. Would you like to leave on your back or on your feet? That's your choices.
Oh, God.
And with that, I mean, Joe Smith issues the call for somebody's got to take out Governor Boggs. That we're not going to be standing for that, which will lead into another character that will come into.
I'll tell you what, we're going to go into the
road.
character now. I think we're going to go into the character now because we know this. Okay, we're setting up our story here. Real quick, Coons, bring up the picture of Brigham Young.
Brigham Young.
So we have Brigham Young over here. Brigham Young is now taking over. This is an older picture of him, so he was a younger man at the time of this.
Epic beard.
He's got a great beard on him. So you want to guess who that is, by the way? Brigham Young. He's now the new head of the Mormon Church, the Church of Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So he's going to have a college named after him, Brigham Young University, where, like we said, the Jets quarterback, current quarterback, was a prodigy of. Their most famous quarterback they've ever put out, though, is Steve Young. You know who Steve Young is, right?
You asking me?
Took over for Joe Montana a couple of Super Bowl championships for the Niners. Steve Young of the 1949ers, that's the full name of, or the 1849ers, rather. Wait for it. This is how crazy it's going to get around here.
KP, I will tell you how much I know about sports, and it's just how to spell the word. That's about it.
Sports.
Oh, Kahuna. Kahuna could be an offensive lineman right now. He could probably block better than half the Giants. That being said, though, this is the thing I'm bringing up. So Brigham Young right there, if you show that picture one more time, Brigham Young is moving the Mormons out to Utah to settle, okay? And they're going to be out in Salt Lake City. Brigham Young University is going to be out in Utah, okay? It's going to be named after that guy right there. And he has no idea now But his great-great-great-grandson is going to be Steve Young, who wins multiple Super Bowls for the San Francisco 49ers. And it gets pretty interesting, too, because I'm not going to unpack all of it here, Dad. They're going to wind up out in Utah where they do start to enjoy this religious isolation that they're getting. But then a gold rush is going to come out, which we've covered on other episodes. Jack London, Calamity Jane, we talked about that. And what's that group of people that are coming through Utah to screw up everything?
The federal government.
Well, the federal government. Very, very good answer, Ron Swanson. But it's going to actually be a group known as the 49ers. That's when the gold rush is going to come through, the 1840. So imagine the hilarity, if you will, of the fact that the NFL names have a group, number one, that get referred to the Church of Latter-day Saints. They just get referred to as the Saints sometimes. So the Saints are having their lives ruined, okay, by the 49ers. Okay, these are both NFL team names right here. And ironically enough, BYU, Brigham Young, their star quarterback, eventually becomes a 49er.
Right.
Okay, so that's the ultimate betrayal here generations later. But
when the Saints go marching.
it's the truth, man. And they were getting run out of everywhere. And as my father was saying, too, when they're running people out of Missouri with this Extermination Act, they have to have some Mormon muscle, if you will. This Nouveau Legion has to come around here, which leads us to one of the most terrifying guys I've ever read about.
Yeah.
Kahuna, please bring up the nightmare fuel for you this week. The gentleman's name is Porter Rockwell. So we're going to bring him up real quick. And then
Wait, old Porter Rockwell?
No, Porter
Porter
Rockwell. You already
Rockwell.
have his image right in
okay.
There it is.
Porter Rockwell. Boom. All right. Are you, folks,
Jesus.
are you going to fuck with that guy?
Yeah.
Go ahead, LP. Who is Porter Rockwell?
Now, Porter Rockwell is a boyhood friend of Joseph Smith. He just grew up a short distance away from the Smith family farm in western New York State. So we're going right back to the origins, if you will. And he is one of the first converts, if you will, to the Mormon religion. And he becomes Joseph Smith's bodyguard. I mean,
Diesel and Shawn Michaels reference making sense now a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah.
this guy, he was definitely the muscle. He was the Luca Brasi to Joe Smith.
He also led the Nightmare Realm. He
Yeah.
could kill you with a stare.
He really. it's
Speaking
some
of which,
scary eyes.
give me the Porter Rockwell stare right into the camera.
Yeah, there you go. That's the evil eye for sure. But he's quite the character. He becomes known as the destroying angel. That if there's somebody that needs killing, who you going to call? It's gonna be Mr. Rockwell.
Can you give
sure.
his actual quote too from later in life? Did you write this one down? It was later used by John Wayne in a John Wayne movie. That's how good of a quote it was.
Yeah, I don't think I got it quote for quote, but it was basically, he never killed anybody that didn't need killing. So
That's how you justify it. And there are those that say he killed more people than Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and Bat Masterson, all of which are featured on the Doc Holliday episode, parts 1 and 2 that we did here on Patreon that the founding losers know about.
yeah, and he was also, he is a big time character within the early Mormon Church for sure. That when they do go out to the new territory, he is appointed sheriff. So he's, upholding the law, but it's also he's becoming judge and jury and executioner for a lot of the people that didn't quite go along with their ideas or their beliefs.
There were some stories, too, that because he was such a friend of Joseph Smith from the time he was a boy, Joseph Smith was 8 years older than him, that post his success, there's a couple things to it. And don't let me cut off any parts of the story here, too, but were you going to talk about the Samson thing and then the shooting of the governor?
Yeah, well, he was charged with the assassination attempt on the governor. Remember, we talked about Governor Boggs, who was the Missouri governor who set out that executive order about to exterminate the Mormons. Well, there was an assassination attempt on Governor Boggs, and our boy here was charged with that. Porter Rockwell was charged with that. It was never proven, but he did serve 9 months in jail. You talk about, a speedy trial. Well, he was 9 months in what was termed, in some of the research that I did, a dungeon, without any clothing or anything, and to fight against the cold and being fed food that the dogs wouldn't eat. So I mean, he was.
We're cruel in our
Yeah,
punishments.
he was
Jesus
he was
Christ.
tortured, if you will, for 9 months, and he's finally set free, and he comes back, walks, I believe, like 100 miles once he is set
wouldn't
free.
walk 500 miles.
Yeah, so
I
and he
knew
comes
it.
back to Joseph Smith's, and right around at the time it was like a Christmas party going on. The Mormons do believe in Jesus Christ, and they do celebrate Christmas. So there's a Christmas party going on, and he walks in, and he's just out of jail for 9 months, and he's a dungeon for 9 months, and he's now
Rabid.
yeah, skinny, long-haired, scraggly,
Unkempt beard.
unkempt beard. That he's looking a fright. He's even more scarier than the picture that the Kahuna brought up. That
There's a
and-
great drawing of him, by the way, when he was in the prison. Of him, he actually had a fishing line, and he was throwing the fishing line with a little piece of bread into a nearby lake to try to catch fish through his own, because they weren't feeding him well.
Okay.
And the other thing I wanted to mention too is that when they asked Joseph Smith, this is all obviously before he was murdered, did he think that Porter Rockwell was guilty of the crime? And he goes, "Well, the governor lived, so I know Porter didn't do it."
Yeah. Actually, Rockwell always professed his innocence in the Governor Boggs assassination, and in an attempt at using his evidence, he said, "I never shot at anybody. If I shoot, they get shot." If he's still alive, isn't he? Yeah. So in other words, if he ain't dead, it wasn't me who shot him. It
wasn't
shot
me.
at him.
And I believe on his deathbed he was even saying too that he had never done anything he would have been ashamed of as well. So everything that he felt was justified and required by his faith. And mind you too, when he does die in his old age, he dies as the oldest living convert to the Mormon religion ever, because the first was Joseph Smith, who did not live all that long, and then his brother, obviously, Hiram. So Porter Rockwell, pretty badass dude over here. He's kind of the guy that's showing a little bit of the fight here, that maybe the Mormons aren't going to go quite so quietly. They're not going to be bullied. Happily, they're not just lambs being led to slaughter.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a mafioso kind of a vibe to this. The Italian immigrant wave's coming in. They have to go to La Cosa Nostra to try to get things.
Yeah,
I can't go to the police with this Don Corleone. Can you, Don Porter Rockwell? Can you help me avenge the innocence of my daughter?
Yeah. It's a religion that believes in Jesus Christ, but love thy brother and turn the other cheek isn't quite what they're professing.
Love your brother, turn your ass around, though.
That's right.
So you got us out now. Excellent, by the way. Porter Rockwell has now been established. He's got a couple other things that pop him up here in the story. And like you were saying, Dad, though, is that what did Joseph Smith say to him to add to his already, larger-than-life persona? When he sees him at this Christmas party, what's he tell him?
Oh, he brings him back into the fold, accepts him, and he's now, he's his number one bodyguard, if you will. And this guy went with Joe Smith back east to try to negotiate with some of the federal representatives about, hey, these Mormons need to be protected, that they're not going on. And so, was he a bodyguard, or was he also part of the political part of the whole?
Got his long, scraggly hair, though, Dad. Why is he keeping that around?
Oh, yeah. Like, I think Joe Smith decreed that as long as he kept his hair long, that he would not suffer death by a bullet.
Oh, God.
Which is an allusion to the Samson mythology from the Old Testament here. So now you're saying that this guy, this big badass biker-looking dude, now also has superpowers. You're trying to,
Yeah.
which is going to just intimidate people further about trying to mess with old Porter Rockwell and the Church of Latter-day Saints.
But there was one incident after that where he actually did cut his hair, but that was he cut his hair so that a woman of the Mormon faith who suffered typhoid fever lost all her hair, so they cut his hair so that she might be able to create a wig to wear in her.
And if you look
her
at Porter Rockwell's
baldness.
hair, that actually might be
Yeah.
considered mean.
That's
what
right.
he did.
Right.
That's like Kahuna loses all his hair, so we give him mine, and all of a sudden he's walking around with this
Or
thin,
mine?
wavy blonde shit.
How about mine? What can you do with this, Cahoons?
I can rock bald. I can do it.
I've seen it. Now, like we were saying too, so the Mormons are moving out to Utah over here. They're going to start to settle it. Now, another interesting thing is that Brigham Young, like I said, one last NFL analogy here. Steve Young, Brigham Young's great-great-great-grandson, okay, who goes to BYU, he will actually wind up eventually replacing on the San Francisco 49ers, the 1840, the gold rush that's coming through that's going to disrupt the Utah thing. He replaces a guy named Montana. Montana, also another place. It's all there, folks.
That's right. It's all interconnected. It's spiritual for sure.
But long before Steve Young, Brigham Young has to settle everything out there in what's seemingly going to be an interesting spot. They're going to, because they can have, and by the way, this is an interesting thing about the Mormons, let them have their little slice of what they need to create for their heaven, their religious aspect, not too differently from the way we did with the Puritans and the Pilgrims, and then maybe if you just let the Catholics have Mass on a Sunday, maybe you don't have to have bloody fighting in the streets of 5 Points, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let these people practice their religion, and as long as they're not having, as long as they're not causing problems, you should just leave people alone for their religion. That's kind of an easy thing to do over here. So in an effort to keep things civil, the president at this time is Millard Fillmore, which, Kahuna, you would remember from Kahuna.
Quiz time.
Come on, Kahuna. Come on, you were gonna.
Kahuna, your circuit's dead.
Remember
There's
we
something
sent
wrong.
you. We asked you to research Millard Fillmore for this episode.
Shut up.
Folks, I'm sorry. All right, Kahuna might have.
Another football analogy. He dropped the ball, folks.
What did you expect? like I told you, all I know about sports is how to spell the word. And I'm not kidding.
Kahuna is actually a descendant of Millard Fillmore, which is what makes this all the much more upsetting.
Oh my God.
We're teasing. Millard Fillmore, very, very boring president, okay? But Millard Fillmore does make an interesting move here. He decides that it's going to be popular. Hey, I got all these people out in Utah. They follow this Mormon religion. The head of their religion is this guy named Brigham Young. He seems like he's an all right guy in correspondence. Hey, dude, I need a territorial governor for Utah. I'm just going to make it Brigham Young. So boom, Brigham Young. They've now gone from when they were the mayor of a small city in Illinois to being run out and gunshots blazing to being literally banned upon threat of extermination in Missouri to now you're the governor of the entire territory of Utah, and the Mormons are pretty much left out there on their own.
Yeah, pretty much at this point in time, though, Utah really didn't have a whole lot of monetary value, but it wasn't
Nope.
until the 49ers they had discovered gold in California. Well, now I got to get out to California to stake my claim in this whole gold rush, and how are you going to go? Well, you're going to go through Utah. So now all of a sudden, people are looking at Utah in a little different light. That maybe we kind of overlooked this. That,
The weather's pretty good here. Maybe we could. What if we started a city where you could do all the legal gambling you wanted, and we made.
Yeah.
No, that's a little further south. Sorry about that. So, they are going to found their own city though, Salt Lake City. Okay, so they're starting to build up all this here. They're actually, and it's a great culture behind everything. It is religiously driven, but there's a lot of good, and they value education, they value family, and the big thing, like we were saying as well. Here's kind of the problem here. Now you have this other issue, the big issue going on in America at the time, since its inception, you might argue. There's always been the argument over slavery. And obviously there's a lot of the East Coast, Massachusetts is outlawing it super early on. Then there's going to be more contention to the point where eventually you're going to have a civil war, which happens after this. The Mormons' role in this agitation here is that around the same time that this Utah war is starting to brew up over here that we're getting into, there's also a little thing called Bleeding Kansas going on. And that's the argument between slave states and free states. And here's the problem. This Mormon population is all completely against slavery, but they're also pro-polygamy. So like we said, you can't
Right.
you can't line up with it's people. You have hey, we got this one tiny thing in common, and then the most deplorable behavior.
Pick your poison.
Yeah, which one am I going to be trying to line up with here? So the Mormons can also upset the power of the balance of power, if you will, because they do vote in a block tendency. Okay, it's about trying to win over blocks of voters. So
And the Mormons are also taking care of some of the Native American situation too. That Utah was not uncontested. There were still people living there.
There were skirmishes with the natives. There was also a lot of Brigham Young's idea was, well, if we convert them and bring them in. So
Right.
there was, and Mormons, for the most part, it's a pretty accepting religion on a lot of that stuff too. Which is very funny too, because when you see pictures of any of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, every girl is blonde and 5'9". That's just it's like they grow on trees out there.
And there's also some atrocities charged against the Mormons to the Native Americans. So again, it wasn't all smooth sailing. That
No, it's not a brand new Thanksgiving Day
Yeah.
out there. Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Can't we all just get along?
Well, you can't when the beliefs are that wildly different. But
Right.
now with the Utah governor's seat being filled by Brigham Young, his cabinet and all the other positions of power in the territory are going to be very noticeably filled by other Mormons. So there's a rise in legitimate power made out of some very fearful previous issues with the Mormons. Are they a cult? Are they a political machine? We don't really know. Either way, like we said, the key here is, can it upset the balance of power? And the majority of Americans considered Mormons to be immoral. The Mormons were so controversial, to say the very least over here. They loved America, though. They hated its ideas and hated the federal government. Dad, all these years, I never realized, that's me. I love America and I hate the federal government.
There you go.
I'm a Mormon. Sign me up. Zach Wilson's mom, what are you doing after this? So, now, Brigham Young will bolster some unabashed patriotism. They do love America out there. Big, big 4th of July celebrations
Yep.
all the time. And Brigham Young, too, you don't expect a Mormon to have a trash mouth like this, so this is a little bit of a trash mouth for him here. But I thought it was a damn good quote. Brigham Young, again, big 4th of July parties out in Salt Lake City all the time, but he also throws out this quote. I love the United States, and I love its Constitution, but I do not love those damned rascals that administer it. So it's like, hey, it's a great country you got here. If it wasn't for that goddamn government in the way. So,
He just hates politics.
The saying
Oh,
still carries to
politicians.
this day.
Right.
It's,
Loves the government, loves the United States, but hates politicians. So, hey, what's wrong with that?
yeah, you should be fearful of the state, just kind of what it is. Tensions would, and by the way, if you're not fearful of the state, keep in mind what they did in Missouri that my father talked about, 100% legal at the time. The Extermination Act, that's right. The Indian Removal Act, the Chinese Exclusion Act,
Oh, yeah, a little side note to that,
the
too.
Kahuna Removal Act.
The Extermination Act, that wasn't rescinded until 126 years later. They finally got around to taking that one off the books. So,
I want to say that it was because there was a good quarterback out of BYU, and they were like, Kansas City was needing somebody, and like, I don't know, this could be the next Steve Young. And by the way, please no Kahuna Removal Act. We only have one, folks, okay? We only have one.
he's an endangered species.
And for as little as $3 a month, you can help support him by joining the Patreon of this. It's one kahuna. That's all we have in this world, folks. So,
One kahuna, two kahuna, three kahuna, more.
oh, I can't even imagine on that one. So tensions will continue to rise as this experiment now of living amongst the Mormons and Mormons, and this melting pot's going to begin to heat up because you got people coming in now because of this gold rush. They're sticking around over there in Utah, and they're like, "Hey, why do the Mormons get to call all the shots around here?" And again, like all beefs, both sides have legit arguments. The Mormons are afraid that now all the influence from back east that's starting to come west towards them is going to empower their enemies and potentially force them to flee persecution again. Mormons got a legit beef. Is that fair to say, Cahoons?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The religion's a little quirky sometimes. They operate in some devious ways here. But if you go out, you're like, listen, okay, I've gone all the way out here. I've settled my own place. I'm doing my own thing now. And then they come back and like, hey, by the way, we're coming out here too. And, the feelings of animosity back east, yeah, we still don't like you. Yeah, but you came to us this time. Yeah, but we're here now and we don't like you, you know? So it's like trying to outrun your
We're not
blockbuster
exactly
fees.
pinnacles of logic, are we?
No, but it gets tough because times were different back then. The hierarchy of needs was different as well. And the Mormons used to get kicked out of every town they ever tried to take over, so now they go west and get their own town, and now the government is threatening to kick them out of their own town. So it's getting a little bit goofy over here. So a lot of people out in Utah see the combined power of the Mormons as something that would be able to usurp power, especially of that of the federal government. And unfortunately, on this show, what do we say? You don't fuck with TR.
Yeah.
And typically you don't win against the federal government. So we've tried
Very
with
few
taxes.
people have.
Oh, yeah. With 87,000 new IRS agents. Yeah, we're all getting audited. Everyone's getting audited. Kahuna's getting audited. I'm getting audited. The show's being audited. Teddy Bear Roosevelt is being audited. So
It's happening right the fuck now.
Your money's in the Cayman Islands, right, little buddy? So
Shut up, KP.
this way. That's why I haven't seen Ming in forever. Ming skipped the country.
That's right.
The Chinese will not extradite one of their own.
He's offshore, way offshore.
Oh, all right. I just made Kahuna's day with a reference. So, Lawrence Patrick, this brings us to 1857.
1857. Yeah. We're struggling here, but we're coming along.
President James Buchanan, Kahuna's second favorite president, okay, will come to power and decide that he should probably send some troops out to Utah since it's starting to become such a hotbed of issues that it's gaining comparisons to this bleeding Kansas situation.
Yeah, plus Brigham Young at this point has got his own little militia, his own army out there in Utah.
The Nauvoo Legion.
Yeah, the Nauvoo Legion.
And who's going to be joining up with them eventually, Dad?
I don't know. You lost me on that one.
Oh, well, at first, he's not part of it. So we've established that the big swinging dick, the badass of the Mormon army, if you will, the avenging angel of Mormonism.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Porter Rockwell. He's out living around. He's spreading the word. He's actually working as a postal worker for the Mormons directly to bring them to guarantee that they get their mail. Because this is all prior to, and by the way, the Utah War that we're about to cover, one of the consequences of it is that they established the friggin' Pony Express afterwards. So kind of cool there. But Brigham Young's an interesting guy here. It's 1857. And again, it's comparative to this bleeding Kansas situation. But this Nauvoo Legion is out there. They can they're saying, hey, we're not here to get pushed around.
Yeah, it's more than a political party. They've got some military might as well, so that they've got some muscle.
They do. And it's going to be interesting now, too, because Brigham Young knows that federal troops are likely going to be coming to Utah because the tensions continue to build here. The idea. Now, let me ask you this one, Kahuna.
Yes, sir.
You're Brigham Young.
Yeah.
Okay, the guy you took over for, Joseph Smith. When the feds came for him, okay.
Hold on, let me get my white out. I want to be historically accurate. All right. Yeah, I'm Brigham Young.
You're Brigham Young, okay. And the guy who you replaced, Joseph Smith, he is now, you've seen him murdered and killed while trying to face some charges
Who
here.
was assassinated
fun
while
times.
he's in jail.
Right, so you now get away from the federal
Wait, while
government.
he's in jail? What
Oh,
happened?
yeah.
Yeah, man.
Oh, crap. Okay. Fuck. See? No, okay. Yeah.
We woke him up.
No, I'm sitting. I'm in character. What are you talking about?
Okay.
It was that picture of Luscious Lopez he's still thinking about.
Eat shit, KP.
You know we
I'm
love
cutting
you.
this out.
You know we love you. So here's what happened. He has the right to be nervous because his predecessor was murdered essentially by people in the federal government. It's, as my father kind of alluded to, political enemies were able to take them out. And now they've established their own place out here. As soon as these troops get into Utah, the first thing they're going to do is put a new governor in place, potentially make them suffer for martial law. What would you think might be? Do you think it's easy to think as Brigham Young you're going to suffer the same fate as Joseph Smith?
I'd be afraid that would be on the table.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, I mean, if it happened to the predecessor over this
Right.
X amount of details,
Right.
I'm fairly certain if I go into it the same way, I'm probably going to end up the same way. I don't want to be 6 feet under.
Yeah, you don't want to be the next Montezuma type figure that Cortez comes across. Can you say, hey, what happened to the first guy you dealt with? Oh, yeah, okay. I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
But so Brigham Young, he knows that when the federal troops come, it's likely that his time as governor is finished. No sooner do the rumors begin to swirl that Buchanan, okay, now President James Buchanan, it was Millard Fillmore that appointed him, now James Buchanan, who, by the way, is considered and ranked by historians as the worst president of all time. So whenever you have some asshole that's sitting there like, no, it's Joe Biden, or oh, it's Donald Trump. Nope. We got some bad ones,
That's
okay?
right. Do your history.
Yeah, Warren G's up there, Franklin Pierce is up there, Buchanan's up there, all right?
Which
So,
is such a waste of a good name, too.
Buchanan?
Yeah.
It's a good name, Buchanan.
It's a great fucking name. Worst president. Damn
He's
it.
he definitely. This is considered. Remember, another name for this event is Buchanan's blunder. So he's going to send troops.
I mean,
out
it
west.
has more of a ring to it than Buchanan's fuck up.
That's it.
Yeah, the B and the B. It's a
It's alliteration. baby,
alliteration.
right?
Yeah,
We
I
like
was gonna-
literary
I was
devices.
just gonna- I
on
was
this
just going
show.
to ask the speechifier here, the writer here. Alliteration.
Well, now Buchanan sends these troops out, and the Mormon fears becoming realized. Accompanying the troops is a guy by the name of Alfred Cumming, who had just been declared by Buchanan, when you get out there, you're going to be the new governor, okay?
Yeah. Hey, Al, you're it.
What a great assignment. Hey, we're sending you to a religious camp, if you will, that's been well established for a couple of years here. Majority of the population follows this religion to the point of devotation. They have a penchant for violence. And by the way, you're in charge, and your first job is to tell them they're out.
There you go.
So the idea being that they wanted Cummings in charge and that the troops would then pacify the Mormon population. They didn't want people kicked out. They didn't want to go through an order number 44 type thing. They wanted to hopefully have a peaceful way of resolving this, but also strengthening and solidifying the bond that Utah is firmly now part of the United States territory. So news will finally reach Brigham Young himself, even though he was already talking about it in his church speeches, if you will. That because, by the way, the church for them was also like a town hall of sorts. So Brigham Young's kind of talking, he goes, they might be sending troops out there. Perhaps my time as governor might be coming into question. Here's just things we're talking about. And then, boom, Brigham Young's new bodyguard, okay, Joseph Smith's former bodyguard, the terrifying man known as Porter Rockwell, he gets news back to Brigham Young. Hey, U.S. troops are on the way.
They're here.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming for you, Brig.
So Briggs a great, oh man, that's a great name. I wonder if they ever called him that. Now,
Not to his face.
No. Important to note that just because we have this idea of Zach Wilson, Book of Mormon thing like we keep talking about, Porter is one of the scariest dudes around, okay? And he is a murderer. He's also a very well-respected mountain man. Now, I'm going to just mention something that's going to come into play later on. Apparently, because Porter Rockwell was so well-respected as a mountain man, a badass dude that knew his way around because of delivering the mail here for the Mormons, he could live up in the mountains. He knew how to do it. He had all the tricks of the mountain man. Now, he also couldn't read and write. So any of his advice or stories, there's always taken secondhand. And this one guy that was putting together books on the mountain men, he meets up with Porter Rockwell, finds him to be a great guy. Everybody who liked him, and everybody who didn't like him, well, they didn't last too long, all right? But Porter Rockwell had a pretty great quote when he was trying to tell a guy, he goes, listen, here's what you do. When you're on the trail, you cook your dinner here. Then about a couple miles away, you make your camp and you sleep over there, and you never have a campfire. You don't ever want anybody to be able to come see you. He goes, and there's certain parts where you're worried about real Indians, and he goes, and then you're worried about the white Indians. The white Indians were white outlaws, if you will, that lived out in the woods that would dress up as Native Americans and attack parties so that they would come back and say, oh, the Native Americans. That way they're looking for the wrong person, all right? It's kind of like that move they had in Goodfellas.
That's spooky.
Oh, it's very spooky, and it gets spookier. So it is October now, folks. So
What is that called again?
what the...
Well, I mean, is there a name for that strategy? Just dressing up? Well, there was a name for it.
Boston Tea Party, I think.
Boston Tea Party's there too. It's, so white Indians is what Porter Rockwell was worrying about. I don't think that's the accepted term for it, but it's a little bit
That's a KP
creepy.
term.
A KP
We'll
term.
go with that.
White Indians. I did dress up as a Native American for almost every holiday. We grew up loving that culture, from the safety of New Jersey, mind you.
Yeah, right.
But now, again, here's where it gets extra wild. The whole story's been wild. We're trying to walk the lines here. We want to be fair to the Mormon Church. We want to be at least aware of why maybe there were some troubles too, and we're trying to give a little bit of humanity to the story here. But at the end of the day, the government is sending federal troops. It's going to take them a while to get over there. The Mormons are afraid things are going back to what they used to be and also losing control over what they've built. The government can come in and just take away shit from you, okay? It's what it is. It's been going on since we started the idea of government. This goes back to kings, monarchs, emperors, Holy Roman emperors, lead cavemen, everything. So,
It's still bullshit, but it is what it is.
That's right.
but now here we are. The stage is set, folks. Both parties are about to look bad at the same time in what becomes known as the Utah War.
Finally, we got there.
So, Dad, Joseph Smith, talk to me for a second.
Wow.
September of 1857, an immigrant wagon party comes through Mountain Meadows, okay? And if you want to jump in on this at any point, too, you let me know on this one. I don't know if we should have all the same info for the most part.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same.
Okay. So, Kahuna, we were just talking about that there's certain mountain passes that Porter Rockwell was warning mountain men about, saying, oh, you got the real Indians that fight here, then you got the white Indians, which dress up as Indians so that the Indians are who the authorities go looking for and blaming stuff on.
Right.
That way, it's a nice way of getting your a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Who's taking the rap?
So in September of 1857, an immigrant wagon party comes through Mountain Meadows, okay? The families are mostly from Arkansas originally and plan to reach California. So they are traveling through Utah from Arkansas on their way to California. They have no idea or no plans of stopping in Utah, but everything gets real spooky around this time. Paranoia is running deep. Hey, the feds are coming. Do you think the feds would hide spies among some of these wagon parties? Do you think this wagon party is feeding back information to the federal troops? Things are starting to get nervous. Paranoia is what makes people go crazy here, all right?
Strikes deep.
So, oh, stop. Hey, what's that sound? So
Everybody look what's going down. Sorry.
he has the nicest singing. But actually, I would love to have, one day we'll just have Kahuna and my father sing, because they both have nice singing voices. So, again, these
I do
families are
wanna do
mostly
another
from
Christmas
Arkansas.
record, so.
Ooh, a
hit me
Christmas app. You know, I like it, too.
Chris Madden involved too.
The real we love Chris Mad. Now again, these families from Arkansas, they just want to read. They're a wagon party, okay? They're peaceful for the most part, and you have to be able to fight back against some of these attacks that might happen. And of course, they get attacked by Native Americans. All right, for 3 days of fighting. I believe it's September 7th, 8th, 9th. Yeah, I think that's it. They wind up fighting for those 3 days there. Again, it's 1857. This is a wagon train party being attacked by Native Americans.
Yeah.
Now, they can't really see the Native Americans too well. They're not getting too close. Some people start to notice a couple of things here and there, though. These aren't the tan Indians that we've kind of come to expect from what we were told and other encounters we've had. Kahuna, these might be those white Indians Porter Rockwell was talking about.
Them imposters.
That's right. So luckily, after 3 days of very fierce fighting, a couple of people getting killed here and there.
Yeah, they were besieged.
Besieged for 3 days, right? But I'm not downplaying that. I'm just making sure we know that what comes next is the worst.
Yeah, so they, basically envision they circled up the wagons for 3 days now. They're not moving forward. They're circling up the wagons. They're besieged. They can't go forward. They can't
Oh
go
yeah,
back.
it's full John Wayne time. There's no
Yeah.
cavalry coming for you.
And but then wait, you said there's
Finally.
no cavalry coming, but
Finally, the cavalry's here. John D. Lee shows up. Okay, if I get a picture of John D. Lee, you can show up the older one over here. John D. Lee's going to show up. Okay, and that looks like an upstanding gentleman right there. That guy's a lawyer. That guy owns a grocery store, something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So now he shows up, and he goes, I'm here from the Mormon church. We're fellow white settlers. We mean you no harm. Is everyone okay? What can we do for you? Hey, come over here with us real quick. Kuhn, if you could bring up a picture of the massacre.
Oh.
John D. Lee will then take all of the people from this wagon train, okay, that was coming from Arkansas, heading to California, no desire to stop in Utah as far as they officially declared. And John D. Lee takes them under a flag of white truce, okay, sitting there and saying, you're safe now, we're here, we're going to take care of you, no more Native Americans are going to come attack you. And they pull a full-on Red Wedding from Game of Thrones. They kill 120 people, okay?
Oh my God.
120 people, almost all of the people that were on this wagon train, men, women, and children, all killed now, okay, by the Mormons.
History's
okay?
not always so rosy, is it?
No, sir. That's why this show has to exist, man. We'll give you the good, the bad, and the
yeah, I
ugly.
wonder why
all
I
right?
didn't read about this in my U.S. History 1 class.
Well, when you read about it, this is what's so crazy, too. If you read the Mormon textbooks, this was God punished the wagon party because they wished ill will on the church. They also skim over a bunch of the details there. And then they always say that, the numbers were kind of blown out of proportion. And then the people who are anti-Mormons were saying, that's why we should string up every Mormon we find. So you can find assholes on either side of any argument.
Absolutely.
We're kind of screwed as a society because we grew up in the idea of good and bad white hat versus black hat.
Right.
Right? And that's not exactly what
it's
you
always the
get here.
fringe that's
Exactly.
everybody judges
There's
the whole group by.
only one man in this world has ever truly been perfect, and you can believe in him, okay? And his name is Stone Cold Steve Austin, okay? But that being said, this murder goes down. Mind you, too, by the way, Kahuna, these Mormons underneath John D. Lee that are pulling off this ugly massacre. All right, pull up that picture one more time. A pretty gross massacre right there. All right, just pick up John D. Lee again. John D. Lee looks like a white fella to me, doesn't he?
Yeah, he didn't look like doing Native American.
Now,
to
what if
me.
he had some Native American war paint on and maybe took his shirt off and made some whooping sounds?
No.
Maybe the Native Americans that were attacking the wagon party for 3 days were Mormons in disguise as white Indians. They
And
pitched a
after-
3-day
after
battle.
besieging the wagon train for
Dum,
3
dum, dum,
days,
dum.
they said, hey, I know a better way of ending this.
Yeah, we're running out of food. Hey, I got an idea. What if I get them to surrender and then we massacre all of them? Yeah, this is not a great look for the Mormons at this time. And by the way, the Mormon community, for the most part, is very split on this as well, too. Brigham Young has some...
Split?
He's controversial with some of his things that he said about this. He said that he thought that the eventual punishment that's going to come down the line, he thought that was the execution was accurate and required, but it was not enough blood sacrifice to amend for the sin. At the same time, he also said, but God did punish that wagon party. Porter Rockwell warns people about the nastiness of the white Indians, and sometimes his own brethren were playing the role of the white Indians. So, again, that's the nastiest thing here. Now, by the way, I will say this. I don't want to really freak out the kahuna. But I think
That's
we
not
should.
true.
I think we should, right?
Yeah,
Should we-
it's standard
I'll let
formula.
you. Do we want to ruin this for Kahuna now or later?
Ruin it for him now and later.
Kahuna, bring up John D. Lee one more time for me, if you will. John D. Lee, the guy who is really the one name that was ever punished for the massacre that took place over here at Mountain Meadows. He's an interesting guy. He eventually will receive the death penalty. In 1877, he's killed. Because they were trying to bring up charges against him too, but for the Civil War was obviously going on. It wasn't a major matter over
Yeah,
here.
he's executed for the mass murder of the Mountain Meadows.
mass
Surprise!
murderer.
He's Alcatraz's first prisoner. Fucking American loser. There you go. What?
That's pretty good too, and that would make you sleep better at night than what I'm about to say.
Fuck.
He is killed in 1877. He is survived by 19 wives and 56 children. Among his currently living descendants are 2 United States senators and 4 members of the House of Representatives. Feel free to look them up.
Yeah.
Bring up Kahuna Vision so we can enjoy the chaos.
Let me see the face.
Kahuna Vision is just his chair rocking back when he left.
Yeah.
What?
Yes. 2 senators, 4 members of the House of Representatives, and a partridge in a pear tree. So that is John D. Lee. All right, Kahuna's going to wind up looking that up. You can go ahead and pull up a couple of these photos too, man. We're going to bring that back on later on here. The story is going to grab major headlines of this massacre, though. The Mormons are going to claim self-defense, even though Brigham Young, like we said, the God punished that wagon party. So
Yeah, that blood atonement thing was, another one of the tripping points, if you will, for the acceptance of the Mormon religion.
yeah, it's a bad one.
Brigham Young carried a Bowie knife to take care of any.
Was it Brigham that carried the knife?
Yeah.
Brigham Young himself, that now the head of the Church of Latter-day Saints, carried. My father proved this. We talked about it. We were having dinner the other day. A Bowie knife, a Jim Bowie knife. Remember that badass knife that helped almost win the Alamo? That's what I like to think. But that was him. Okay, so he's a preacher in one hand with the Bible, and in the other hand, a giant gutting knife. So Kahuna's losing his mind right now. He's going full Alex Jones. He's deep in the wormhole of
This is your fucking fault.
Yeah, a little homework for everybody if you want to look up the descendants of our Mr. Lee.
So we're starting off spooky season right here, folks. And but they're also generations removed from this too. But it is nuts that they all come from the founding lineage of a notable mass murderer who was given the death penalty. And by the way, chose firing squad. And his last words were, "I'm just a scapegoat."
Yeah.
So anyway, here's the whole thing. This is what they're trying to pull off over here. The Mormon thing is, there's some people that find them pitiable. We're going to get into 2 interesting guys here for a second. But one of the most famous people in America is going to, once the dust kind of settles here, one of the most famous men in America, Mark Twain, who is just, he's about as close to a perfect human being as I can think of. Always on pretty much the right side of many issues. Great sense of humor. Also started, I believe, Lynette Palladino told me that he's considered the first stand-up comedy tour because he traveled around the country giving speeches
One-man show.
that were always funny.
Yeah.
So I went to the Mark Twain thing at a couple of writers conventions I went to when I was still in college, and it was never funny. That's why I was like, you guys don't get Twain, man. Twain was funny. And they're like, there's problems in some of his works. No, there's not. Shut up. It's
Somebody's
Mark Twain.
going to like this guy for sure. If he thinks he's funny.
Kona, could you bring up the Brigham Wives political cartoon over there? This one cracks me up here. This is Mark Twain, I believe, gets some credit for this one here, that when Brigham Young will finally actually pass, this is a picture of all of his 19 wives all laying in bed crying at the same time.
On Brigham's featherbed. 9 feet wide, 6 feet. That's fucking crazy.
So that's his giant bed where all of his 19 wives are all mourning him at the same time as one little spot in the middle where Brigham Young used to be is no longer there. But real quick, if you can bring up the massacre again over here, okay? Pretty ugly massacre over there. Now, President Buchanan, he's got something he's got to do. He's already sent these troops out, okay? And Buchanan, not a great-looking man to begin with either.
That's fucked up. I was about to say you look like Ken Kranz.
Not a great-looking man either. We love Ken Kranz. Check out I Love Rock and Roll, one of the best shows on this network. So, moving forward here. Things are getting ugly. It's pretty tense over in Utah at this time. So, Brigham Young will declare martial law and realize that even his people, who are now going to have to, they're not exactly a warring nation. They have the Nuvu Legion, like you were saying, Dad.
Right.
But now it's going to come down to, it's like that scene from the Two Towers in The Lord of the Rings where now the women and children are starting to get fitted up with, young boys are being given like an old, barely sharpened sword. Here's a penknife to go kill something with, you know.
Right.
A direct fight with the U.S. troops would be very, very bad for the people who are repairing old hunting rifles and sharpening their farming tools into weaponry. All right? There's one guy with a shotgun and a chainsaw hand. Sorry, wrong movie. Army of Darkness. But a direct fight with the U.S. troops for these Mormons in Salt Lake City will be bad. The Army's
Yeah, it's
on
not
their
gonna
way.
go well.
Yeah, so what do you have to do? What are you going to do? What's the best way to, quote, agitate a solution, Dad?
Negotiate.
Negotiate would be good.
Negotiate.
You need to have time to negotiate, though. So the policy of the Nuvu Legion is going to be to harass the troops that are on their way.
I got you, yeah.
Slowly but surely.
Right.
So it's a war of agitation rather than confrontation. So they pull off a couple interesting moves. What do you got?
They would attack supply trains and that kind of stuff. So they weren't really killing people just yet, but they were definitely harassing them as they're moving out. It's not an immediate, rapid rail movement type of a thing. So they're slowly making their way across to get into Utah with these federal troops, but they're going to a delaying action. They're going to slow them down as much as they possibly can.
It's almost like, if you want to use a good example too, it's Lexington and Concord, the battles, the shot that started, the shot heard around the world that started the American Revolution. The Lexington is just a quick little skirmish. Concord was actually them just harassing the British troops as they were trying to retreat and stuff like that. So that is a way of, this is guerrilla-style warfare that is being fought by the Mormons against the federal government, okay? So it's kind of interesting here. But it does a couple of things. It disrupts the supply lines. It harasses and slows down the movements there, which then, in turn, buys time, which Brigham Young needs in order to be able to try to come to some sort of a resolution with the powers that be in Washington. One such federal officer that's going to get sent out there is Captain Von Villett, Stuart Von Villett, okay?
Stuart Von Villett.
Giving a little...
Of all mine hair.
So, what was it? As soon as you said it, though, I just pictured him as one of those Yorkies with like a snout. So Stuart Von Villett he's going to be coming from back east, rather. He's going to arrive in Salt Lake City. He actually finds out that the group of troops that he's with, they could be getting harassed by the Mormon Nuvu Legion here. So he actually rides by himself, which I thought was remarkable, into Salt Lake City, and he's the guy who's there to specifically deliver the news. Hey, Brigham Young, great job. Great job. Best of luck on your future endeavors.
Yeah.
The federal government has now placed Alfred Cummings in charge of the Utah Territory. You're out. And he goes, all right, well, thank you so much, Captain Van Villett. You're conducting yourself as a gentleman, and the Mormons all know you to be a good guy because you've conducted yourself like a gentleman with us in the past here. But I got to tell you, if I step down from power, I'm a little nervous you're going to do the same exact thing that you guys did to the last guy who had my job.
That's right, you're right.
So what do you think about that? And Von Villett's like, oh, no, there's no way we would do that. And meanwhile, Von Villett's being fed stories about how the Mormons are, it's all a united power. It's one giant cult. They all drink the Kool-Aid for, that term wasn't around just yet. And the polygamy must be, nonstop, and it must be grotesque and in your face, and it's young children not even fit to be married yet. And he realizes, he goes, I'm going to these church meetings that these Mormons are having. I'm hearing them speak. They're all highly educated. They're all pretty normal people here. The polygamy thing's a little bit concerning. It's not what I would do, but I would say that these are not the monstrous religious zealot trolls that we've been talked about, on the East Coast. So he decides what he's going to do. He also, first of all, tells Brigham Young, he goes, I think as long as you accept the governorship of Alfred Cummings, you're not going to be killed. Okay? And he goes, I don't even think they'd put you in jail for this.
As long as it's a peaceful transition of power from one governor to the next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, which, as we know, that's one of the crazy things in this country, too, all the time as well, is that we do have the transition of power. So it's one of the things you can hang your hat on, too, okay? Because Rome, not quite the
Not
case.
so much, no.
So,
No.
but anyway, Captain Von Villett has such a great time in Salt Lake City hanging out with Brigham Young, people who are openly hostile, to him, but they're so polite because there is that polite part of the Mormon religion. He actually winds up traveling all the way back to Washington, D.C. to then speak on behalf and defend the rights of the Mormons out in Salt Lake City. Zach Wilson's mom's friends. What did you do? The war would not be as much of a direct conflict, like you were saying, Dad, as it would be a war of agitation. Okay, this includes things like burning crops in certain areas, burning grass, setting grass fields on fire so that the troops have to slow down or they can't feed and graze their horses, stuff like that. There's a really great. Did you get into Lot Smith at all, Dad?
Not so much, but I mean, it's also the time of the year too that they're coming out there.
If we can slow them down just long enough.
In late fall, they're going to be into the winter, and if you're low on supplies going through the Utah winter, that might not be the best way to handle the troops too. I mean, Utah's also good for skiing, but
Nature's
not so
gonna
much
be-
at that time.
And we all know, folks, too, by the way, that getting out towards certain sections of Utah, especially in the wintertime, especially if you don't know which ways to go down which trails, all of a sudden you might find yourself eating your neighbor.
Yeah, well, I got a little sidebar on that too.
Does it involve Fort Bridger?
No, not yet. No, well, maybe it does. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what here. Like
You can
we
see
said,
how much
Enough
research
scaring the
and how
kahuna.
much comparing of notes Kevin and I do before the podcast. But
But no, this one,
it's
this is
just
such
kind
a,
of like a happenstance that we both fall upon. Go ahead.
it's good. I like all this stuff, too. And by the way, we do love doing this show. We only get to do it because of you folks. You all know that already here on the Patreon. We put out a couple of the most famous Patreons that are at least over a year old. We put those out for free over there for the listeners. They should know the story of Sam Adams, especially when it's Oktoberfest season. And we did finally put out the War of 1812, which is some of the most scholarly work you and I have ever done. And we did do a good job here in covering this war in full, but we also have to do the notes do have to get compared a little bit, and we're doing it on the fly, and that's because we're great broadcasters. We're able to. pull
Oh,
this
is that
off.
what it is? Oh, okay.
See?
Yeah,
All
great.
right.
Yeah, great. Kahuna, great broadcasters.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
I haven't spit into the mic lately, have I?
No.
Okay, cool.
That one has the built-in spit shield.
There
Remember?
you go. That's right.
As our boy, I'll tell you what. There's a couple of compliments that we will get to eventually, but we've had some diehard listeners over the years, and they're going to appreciate this one here. All right, this war is not going to be like a direct conflict. They're going to have the guerrilla-style attacks, most famously by a guy named Lot Smith. Lot Smith pulls off the burning of, I believe, 52 federal wagons full of probably food supplies, ammunition, weapons, stuff like that. Pretty substantial loss for the federal government.
Yeah.
Definitely going to slow them down. And if it doesn't slow them down when they get there, they're still not going to be at full strength because these supplies aren't really coming. This is going to be a weird thing. There's a siege coming to Salt Lake City and Utah, and they're just slowing everybody down, trying to buy as much time as you can because as soon as the winter comes through, that's
Prepare.
going to slow them down even more, and we're built for it, okay? It's kind of like Game of Thrones. The North remembers.
That's right.
So, anyway, eventually it's going to lead to an international incident that gets barely avoided over here. I thought this was worth mentioning, too. As Brigham Young realizes that he might still meet the same fate as the Smith brothers back in Illinois, he fears that his own legitimacy is going to be brought into question here. So he decides, what we could do? We could just do what we always do, which is just move on. Whenever the heat gets a little too hot for the Mormons, they just go ahead and move on. So they actually enact a scorched earth policy. Okay, scorched earth policy, Cahoons. If you don't know what it is, fair question, but are you aware of what it is?
Do you mind if I take a guess a little bit?
No, that's what I want you to do. I want you to guess.
It's literally like, in layman's terms, is it kind of like if we can't have it, no one can have it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Perfect.
burn everything behind them?
That's it.
Yeah.
Leave nothing of value.
Oh, did you guys want my house? Yeah. Oh, here, you can have it. I'll leave.
Yeah.
So
You can collect the ashes.
scorched earth policy for majority of Utah, northern Utah as well, and then specifically also Salt Lake City gets abandoned here. This has to be a sight to behold. I want you to picture this. Right, Kahuna, if you saw this right now, I think you'd lose your mind, as would I. Mm-hmm. They decide that they're going to obey the scorched earth policy. They burn their properties down, and they start heading south in search of a new settlement. So the Mormons are going to do what the Mormons are going to do. And an international incident is nearly avoided because this is how bad of a rep the Mormons had at the time. The British were like, oh shit, what if they come to Vancouver? Now we got to kill Mormons too? This is
Yeah. We don't want it. We don't want that problem either. So.
right. So heading north around this time frame wasn't going to work out for them. They decide instead to go ahead and go south. Now this movement will take place within 2 months. Picture within 2 months, almost like a Thanos snap of the finger. And I say that as a guy that has not seen any Marvel movies. A Thanos snap, from what I understand, is where a giant population disappears, right, Coons?
Yes, but basically a Thanos snap is like anything can happen. And one of those things is half of the Earth disappearing.
Well, how about 30,000 people leaving all at once? Over the course of
with the
2
scorched
months.
earth policy behind them.
Scorched
Right.
earth policy behind them. They said, the people who were living there that were not Mormons said it was a sight to behold. You would just look out and there would be just fields of people walking. Picture almost like zombie type stuff. They're just walking away, burning buildings behind them. Brains. So Brigham Young, by the way, is still considered the governor by the people who, the Mormons who are following him as the leader of both the church, and they're not giving. He eventually does concede the power to Alfred Cummings, and Alfred Cummings is sitting there literally begging the entire population of his new territory. He goes, guys, please don't leave. Don't leave. Everything's fine. We're going to be okay.
Right.
And Brigham Young turns around and goes,
Remain calm.
if the troops stop approaching, we'll stop leaving. You can have the troops or you can have the Mormons. You can't have both. So, while many people don't like the Mormons, most Americans felt that this war was truly the fault of a failed and already bad administration and presidency under James Buchanan, and the nation had several other more pressing matters. The whole slavery breaking us apart and having giant war maybe 10 years away at this point. Pretty important.
Yeah,
Pretty
things
important.
are heating up in Kansas and back back in.
Yeah, we're about
things
to
are
divide
heating up all
households.
over. Yeah, right.
So,
And and it wouldn't have been a problem if Buchanan didn't send the troops. It wasn't until he threatened to send in the troops when this latest fracas took place. So
it's like they would train us in the military in order to contain a threat. You want to meet the threat with the lowest amount of use of force necessary. So it's like, listen, if they don't have a weapon on them, you can restrain them using probably your baton, and then teamwork, stuff like that. If they brandish a knife, perhaps, then the use of a gun would then be it. So that's your use of force, contingent, if you will.
escalates.
Continuum, I should say.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got some Navy buddies that are going to tear me apart for what I just said over there. But anyway, it don't matter. But I will say this. Because of that use of force of sending the troops out there, you've now forced them, you've pretty much ruined Salt Lake City. The Mormons are pretty much gone. They're moving south now at this point. A major migration, and then that's also going to lead to other problems here for the Utah territory, because what's going to happen with those Native Americans? Like, hey, you guys liked pretending to be, us and attacking people? Yeah, we're just going to come attack you now. How about that? What winds up happening here, Buchanan has to sit there and Buchanan's got a black eye on him here, and his best way of trying to solve this is he takes a giant frozen steak, slaps it up against his head, and says, yeah, it was a pretty good fight, but listen, I'm going to offer you guys a full pardon in exchange for your loyalty as long as you'll end your insurrection against us. And Brigham Young goes, I thought this was his most brilliant move. Brigham Young goes, we accept your pardon, but we never insurrected against the government. But we'll take the pardon, though. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, we're good. So we're clean slate, yeah, but we never did the crime that we're getting the clean slate for. So, and by the way, too, if you just want to know, the pardon and proclamation comes from Buchanan on April 6, 1858. The Army will arrive to an abandoned Salt Lake City in June of 1858. So that's pretty nuts, man.
Right.
You get the pardon, and then you show up, and then they're like, oh, fuck, the war's over.
Right.
And there's also nothing here. We've wasted everyone's time.
Because we had 30,000 people leaving with the whole scorched earth thing. So
See you.
we saved the ashes.
Full pardons for all involved, except for John D. Lee and those known to be involved in the Mountain Meadows Massacre. John D. Lee would be found guilty and by right chose to face his death via a firing squad. Okay, so he winds up getting killed. And like we said, his final words were, I'm just a scapegoat. All right?
Right.
Brigham Young will go on to have 56 children and is often referred to as the Mormon Moses. At the time of his death, he's also the wealthiest man in all of Utah. And again, his great-great-grandson will win multiple Super Bowl championships for the San Francisco 49ers, his name being Steve Young. James Buchanan will become considered one of the worst presidents in American history, and the majority of his policies actually lead directly to the country breaking up and Abraham Lincoln having to fight for our very soul. All right? And Lawrence Patrick Burke, you had a couple of notes on the way out, don't you?
Yeah, well, I was just reading that with if Steve Young was a descendant of Brigham Young, and Brigham Young had 56 children. Man, that's a family tree that took a while to search through, right?
Yeah, Uncle Bobby. Uncle Bobby had 4 daughters, and then how many grandkids does he have now?
Yeah.
Some of them have been on this very show.
Well, there you go. And he's not of the Mormon faith, though, or the Latter-day Saints.
Not anymore.
What are... Not anymore. Yeah, I lost what I was going to say, so
Tell
my
you what,
bad.
in the meantime, I'm going to say it. Just thank a
Yeah,
couple of people here.
My bad.
Matthew Bruno Feldman, just a great guy, awesome dude. They support the show. They support all my comedy and stuff as well. I mean, gave us one of the best compliments we've ever gotten the other day. Said that tunes in for the history, enjoys my comedy, but legitimately loves the camaraderie that we have on this show, the rapport. We are great broadcasters, all right? It took us 4 years to figure it all out, but we got it. I want to give a shout out real quick. Chris Stout, S-T-A-U-D-T, man. I don't know if you can hear this one. You joined the Patreon, and then 15 hours later you left the Patreon. I don't know if that's because we didn't put the episode out in time, but you never got charged for anything. So, I mean, don't worry about that one, man. Now, we got so many people that we have to thank that are the patrons, man. You guys mean a lot to us. Again, the show goes away as soon as you go away. That's not a threat.
Yeah, really don't.
We need you, because here's what's going to happen, all right? We're going to find out that the U.S. Army is approaching us, and then slowly my father's going to wind up down south, okay, in Florida. Then I'm going to wind up having to move back to Jacksonville and marry some girl with 2 kids already. And then
Kahuna's going to suddenly live in Canada.
Kahuna's going to go north to Vancouver. all right?
Vancouver.
But I will say this one. Cahoons, how soon do you think we can put this one out?
Tomorrow.
You're the best, man. All right, I appreciate you. We do love everything that you do for us here. Thank you to Ming over to Shared Universe Podcast Studio. Always taking great care of us, man. A lot of exciting stuff going on in Jersey around this time, okay? More and more things starting to pop up here and there. Smod Theater is starting to come into its own.
Absolutely.
I know about a couple of things going on there. A few comedy shows coming up here as well. I would promote this already, but by the time this comes out, the show will be done. I've had a killer weekend with my great friend Bobby Kelly, who we did the Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, the Mock Chunk Opera House, which is across the street from where the Molly Maguires were killed. All right, how cool is that?
Wow, how many different episodes did we triangulate on that one, right?
Oh, it's the best. Next time I go out there, I'm going to do the full tour because it'll be a little bit nicer and my life will be easier. Tonight I'm at the Newtown Theater, opening again for the great Robert Kelly. Robert Kelly's special comes out, his brand new special, directed by Louis C.K., available on louisck.com, October 8th. That baby's coming out, man. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. I didn't give Bobby any jokes for that. I didn't give him any jokes. I really didn't. There's some people that like to say, oh, I helped write for that. Bobby is one of a kind. I think he's my favorite comedian I've ever worked with. He's really just, he kills every single time. He's one of the best guys around. And he hired me to help him like clean up a couple of the jokes. Took none of my advice, just kept writing his own stuff the whole. I was literally just a sounding board for him, and I was like, "Oh, and he's paying me for that? Thank you." Bobby's a true artist, one of the great comics out there, man. The true killers out there. So do me a favor, check that out on October 8th at louisck.com. Bobby Kelly's brand new special. Let's see, October 14th and 15th, you can see me headlining Nick's Comedy Stop over in Boston, Massachusetts. If you got any Boston people, Massachusetts people, history fans at all, just come on out and support me, man. I'm going to try to see if I can't walk around a couple of historical sites over there. We'll throw some tea in the water, see how far that gets me. All right? But I'm excited about all that stuff. And then also Veterans Day week, I'll be down at Side Splitters in Tampa. So if you are a Tampa fan, okay, from the show, even in the greater area, coming out and see me. I think I'm featuring for Josh Adam Myers on the Friday and Saturday shows, and then the Thursday and Sunday shows, I'm headlining because Josh doesn't want to do them. So,
so
that's what happens down there. But honest to God, Side Splitter is one of my favorite clubs. Please keep supporting them down there as well. Kuhn, anything you want to tell the people?
Nothing to talk about at the moment, but always a pleasure to be here on American Loser.
Damn straight, man. LP, anything to send the people home happy with?
I think we're gonna whatever. The neurons weren't completely firing in the brain here. I had something, but I quit. Oh, I know what it was. I'm sorry. It
Dad,
just,
anything
it just
else?
came to me.
Dad, anything
Holy
else?
Shit.
No, but just...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, one more time, we pulled that off, right? All right, let's go back to our Missouri governor, Lilburn Boggs. Remember, he was the guy that issued the executive order that the Mormons must be exterminated. Well, there was an assassination attempt on his life, so he decided, well, maybe this isn't the best place for me to be, and maybe I ought to skedaddle out of Missouri. He goes out to California. He actually starts in with a wagon train going out to California. Somebody else he's running to become the lead guy, the head honcho on Wagon Train, the Ward Bond, if you will, of Wagon Train. Right?
What a reference.
He loses that. The people decide, they vote, and they decide that he's not going to be their leader. But then shortly thereafter, the guy that they did elect leaves, and now that he becomes the leader of this wagon train going out to California. And a little further up the trail, a good faction of them split off of his wagon train and take off on their own.
Oh, no.
And the Donner Party. The Donner Party was part of his original wagon train, if you will.
Well, Kahuna's got extra nightmares now. I suppose it's our fault.
Yeah, but that's part of the fun of American Loser. You have all these little interconnects that, oftentimes we read about history in a silo, and it's not. It's all interconnected. That's what makes this whole thing fascinating to me, anyhow.
That's why we can't stop doing the show, man. We're having too much fun here, all right? Each week I get to hang out with my dad and the Kahuna, who has become family to us, and we get to hopefully entertain you guys, man. So to the people that love the show, thank you so much. To the guy who just commented on YouTube, Poo, P-O-O, I'm sorry, man.
Got nothing for you.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do. I'm not Luscious Lopez. I don't have everything you need, okay? That being said, guys, that was the Mormon-Utah War. American Loser. Dad, who is the biggest loser in American history?
I told you, KP, don't be so hard on yourself. Enjoy some of the wildest chapters
and most glanced over topics here on American Loser.